After 27 years, I've finally decided to leave Canada for good. And to give you guys a little bit of a backstory behind this, I'm 27. I was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia. Moved to Ottawa, Ontario, the capital of the country, when I was about 3 or 4 years old. Spent most of my years there. I lived about 3 years in Toronto and about 2 years in Barrie, Ontario. And I'm currently been in Alberta for the last year. And I've built a multi-million dollar business in this country. I've employed many Canadians, paid more than my fair share of taxes, all right? Motherfuckers. I paid my dues. I played the game. My grandparents actually fled the Soviet Union during the Holocaust to survive, and they had to sneak through what would be modern day Ukraine, the forest there across the border into Romania. Back then it was all the Soviet Union, and hop on a ferry to Montreal. So by the time my grandfather and his brother actually arrived in Montreal, his brother had a bullet in the leg. So I'm gonna be forever grateful to Canada for providing them the opportunity to survive and build back when the country was a thriving, prosperous place. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. It's definitely become a country that, even in my own lifetime, when I was growing up here, the childhood was fantastic. You had hockey night in Canada. The culture was awesome. The cities were beautiful. Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto. And unfortunately, this is not the same country that is modern day Canada. These cities are literally decaying from the inside out. It's absolutely disgusting. So much so that some I would equate to being open air asylum drug dens. And we're just cracking the surface of some of the things that are really wrong with Canada now. So this video will go out to you. Like, I'm sure a lot of Canadians can relate. I'm sure a lot of Canadians are going to get pissy in the comments. It is what it is. You can't please them all, right? Clearly. And or if you're somebody from abroad who's considering coming from Canada and you don't quite know what the boot on the ground situation is. You look at Google Images and you just see beautiful mountains and lakes and you think it's Disneyland. My friend, I am sorry, it is far from Disneyland. Unless you're a crackhead, then it's pretty close to Disneyland. I'm gonna get into a plethora of reasons as to why I've decided to leave the country for good, but the most underlying reason, the biggest factor as to why I decided to leave, is I'm not a father right now, but I do intend to be in the future. So it's more of a choice for my future children. So it's just a no-brainer. Like, I want to leave, and I believe that there's not enough opportunity here for my future children. Whereas I've traveled abroad, I've lived in Mexico for 4 months. I've lived in Argentina for 2 months, and I'm traveling to Eastern Europe and the Balkans for about 2 months in this fall. So I've seen the opportunities that are abroad in terms of, you know, building a family, being able to build more of a legacy, build legacy assets, and have a more favorable environment that favors entrepreneurs and businessmen rather than punishes them like Canada. Because the better you do in Canada, the harder they tax you, to the point where you're not incentivized to start any more businesses or even really scale up the ones you have. So it really limits the economy. And of course, a lot of Canadians go, good, pay your fair share, as if you don't already get rinsed. And they're just taking more and more and more to the point where you can't even operate businesses anymore. I'm sure the European Union is quite similar with the red tape and bureaucracy. It's a nightmare. I mean, this is honestly, if you want to get right into it, I think this is a coordinated demolition of the West. It's not just exclusive to Canada, but Canada in particular got pretty nasty with it. And, strong men have to make hard calls in life. You know what I'm saying? Like my grandparents, they had to leave the country they were in, or else they get slaughtered. So, I'm not going to equate my situation to that. That would be hyperbole. But to some extent, it's a tough call you got to make for your future generations. And that's what they did. And that's what I intend to do. I intend to carry that forward. If they're willing to take that risk, I don't think I should be complacent in a dying empire, if you could even call Canada an empire. Like, don't get me wrong, Canada for about 4 to 5 decades post World War II was a land of opportunity. It was fantastic. It was just gorgeous. One of the best countries in the world. Some could argue maybe possibly the best at some points. But You know, 3 generations later, I'm starting to realize that, we're in the part of the cycle where the easy times are over, the hard times are coming in, and it's up to strong men to make the right decision in these hard times for their future generations of children. And I'm seeing some glaring red flags out of Canada that I can't ignore, and I refuse to accept. So one of the absolute biggest issues I have with Canada is what I witnessed from 2020 to 2023. In Canada, we have something similar to the American constitutional rights. In our case, it's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I think in America that still stands. There's still complete legitimacy there. I mean, Americans may have issue with that. Comment below if you do. I don't know. I'm not an American, but it seems that your constitution held up much better than ours in Canada. Our Charter of Rights and Freedom is nothing but just symbolic paper at this point. It may as well be toilet paper after what we witnessed in the country. We witnessed enforced curfews, so people weren't allowed outside past 8 p.m., 9 p.m., or else they get multi-thousand-dollar fines. This was in Quebec. Disgusting. Okay. We had vaccine passports. Disgusting. They froze people's bank accounts illegally for contributing $2 to $5 to a GoFundMe that was protesting against their rights being taken away by the government. So there's a lot of stories of single mothers that couldn't access their funds to feed their children because the government froze it. Disgusting. As this video goes on, you're gonna know my social credit score is gonna be plummeting to the point where this may be my last YouTube video. It's over before it even began. Okay, so the government, of course, they labeled all the protesters, which I saw in person were pretty peace-loving and freedom-based. They labeled them as extremists. And in fact, the federal courts actually ruled in favor that the government impeded on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They were found guilty in court. You know what happened? Nothing. They weren't held accountable. Nothing came of it. They just walked away. So imagine, Americans, if they trampled your constitutional rights, were found guilty of it in federal court, and nothing came of it. You'd have a hard time trusting the foundation of your country, wouldn't you? So that's just for my American brothers and sisters to get a good comprehension of what it's like over here right now. And state overreach has just become the norm. So, once that starts with censorship and limiting your freedoms, it's a slippery slope. And since then, it's been a very quiet, slow decline in civil rights and freedoms in Canada. They quietly pass laws and bills that they think people won't catch on to. It's just eroding our rights, and people are aware. So as I was saying earlier, I have built a multi-million-dollar window, door, and garage door business in Canada, and I'm very grateful for the position I'm in. And to be completely honest with you, if somebody were to try to follow the same path I was this year, 2025, in Canada, I'm not so sure they'd be successful anymore. I don't think the business would take off, which is a scary thing. The only reason I'm successful as I am is that the business was godfathered in over the years. So for new entrepreneurs, it's a pretty brutal battlefield for a business environment. Like, for instance, the income tax can be up to 53%. So you're effectively working over half the year for the government, just in income tax alone, never mind any of the other taxes. And believe me, everything else is taxed, which is why, if you look into it, the majority of Canadians are living off debt. It's one of the highest household debt ratios in the entire world, which is also a pretty scary ticking time bomb. So yeah, what else do we pay? We pay carbon tax, we pay GST, capital gains tax, property tax, death tax, life tax, breathing tax. Go to take a piss, you get taxed. There's no incentive to innovate, only to obey and comply, and that's by design. The best slave class is the slave class that does not even realize they're slaves. And that's honestly what the majority of the Canadian population has unfortunately fallen into under the current government and the former government, which are really honestly the same thing. And they're essentially tax cattle because they're working their asses off year round, and it's going towards taxes and expenses. So nobody's getting ahead. They're just barely running. It's like a hamster wheel, and they're barely even making it around the whole circle. They're tripping up and falling at this point. So, When you have a population of people that are working just to survive and that becomes not enough, when they have to work 2 to 3 jobs and that's still not enough to survive, let alone get ahead, that's a slave class. And they're so tied up in the work that they can't fight it. They may not even realize it. And that's the design that this government, in my opinion, is really after. That's what worries me most. Canada is run by oligopolies. I believe there's about 5 banks, about 3 telecom companies, 2 major food giants, and like 1 pharmacy chain. And between the years 2020 to 2023, the government really proved that when they allowed Walmart, Amazon, Costco to operate the whole time as essential businesses, and your local or your Starbucks was allowed to operate, but a local cafe was not allowed to operate. The same kind of business. So yeah, the illusion of a free market in Canada, it's not real. It's state-sponsored monopoly essentially. So that's another reason as to why I'm not impressed with the business environment in this country. And I do intend to build more businesses in the future. And they sure as well won't be here. This is not a competitive environment. We can't compete globally. And as a result, the OECD has projected that Canada's projected GDP per capita growth will be the lowest in the entire developed world all the way from now through the 2060s. And why? Think about Canada. The most resource-rich nation on earth, second largest land mass. Everyone wants to immigrate here. We share the border with the largest economy in the world. We have shipping ports on the East Coast as well as the West Coast, and the Arctic is opening up for trade exploration. We should be one of the richest, if not the richest country in the world. That's pathetic. That's like that performance with the potential we have is nothing short of treasonous. It's not even pathetic, it's treason. The cities have all just eroded into chaos and open air asylums, as I was saying, drug dens, needles all over the floor, people smoking crack pipes out at like 7 a.m. You're trying to get into the bank and a guy's blowing a cloud of crack smoke in your face, and that'll put a nice little slant on your day for you. Woo! So even in Toronto itself, one city in Canada, the car theft there is so insane that it's about a $1 billion a year business industry. Stealing cars in Toronto, chopping them up, shipping them overseas to places like West Africa and the Middle East. $1 billion industry in one city with the crime like rampant to that level. I gotta breathe. See, the thing about Canada is like the way it's going, it just has my blood boiling. I'm sure many Canadians can relate. And that's just not healthy on the long term. I really enjoy the idea of if I have daughters in the future, walking them along the streets and past attics, tents, and violence. People are fighting over crack rocks in the street. It's fucking disgusting. Honestly, the government should be ashamed of themselves. And if one of them came on to you in an aggressive act and you defended yourself, you're going to jail. That's Canada for you. You are the criminal for defending yourself. Scary. It's scary, They take our gun rights away. You're not allowed to have a handgun in Canada anymore, but the only people with handguns now are criminals. So you can't even defend yourself. It's just the criminals that are armed as a result. And the civilians get their rights eroded even further. And most of the guns are coming over the border illegally anyways to gangs. It's, and you think the government doesn't know this? They know this. Like I said, everything they're doing is intentional demolition. It's collapse. It's a controlled collapse. Yeah, Canadians heavily pride themselves on their free healthcare, which is honestly coming out of our pockets in insane taxes. But the quality of the healthcare is atrocious. There's not enough doctors, so nobody even has a doctor. If you break your leg or arm, expect a 12-hour ER weight room visit before you can even be seen by a doctor. Okay, many people actually die in the weight room in Canada because the waiting times are dangerous, honestly, quite frankly. So the healthcare infrastructure is atrocious. And that's definitely not to the fault of nurses or doctors. They're doing their jobs and they're great. A lot of them are actually being cuffed by the government, essentially, and have to go to the United States, which leads me to an even bigger trend, the brain drain behind Canada. And it's particularly going towards the United States because our best and brightest can get higher salaries, lower taxes, and affordable real estate, and a higher quality of life, and maybe a better climate in America rather than Canada. So we're not retaining talent very well. That's becoming a big issue. It's destroying and eroding all our institutions, honestly. So even though the quality of all of the institutions are eroding at a rapid rate, our taxes are equally rising at a rapid rate. So you're paying more and getting less. I feel like I'm paying 5-star Shangri-La hotel rates to stay in a fucking prostitute-ridden, stabby kind of motel. It's horrible. And it's just not sustainable in the long term. So really, in Canada, we've managed to merge the worst of socialism and the worst of capitalism in two, without getting the benefits of either. And I'll touch this subject because most people are honestly too scared to touch it, but immigration, it needs to be addressed. This is a big issue in Canada right now. And don't get me wrong, I support immigration when it's done correctly and efficiently and proactively. That's not the case in Canada. Now, tourists can actually claim asylum. So a tourist can come here on a recreational visa just for a holiday and then claim asylum. They get over $2,000 a month by the government. They don't have to work. They all live together. They split their benefits and overload the system. I mean, this is the reality of the immigration here. We're not getting more productivity out of them. We're just getting them bled dry by them, by the people that are actually productive and producing income and tax revenue. It's going towards these, quite frankly, these fucking bums. And I don't know why people are so afraid to speak up. Like they think that, oh, we have to be woke. Look how far woke has gotten us. It's not doing us too fucking well, is it? Maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe woke needs to die and reality needs to set in, and we need to actually take responsibility of our actions and our decisions here and clean up this fucking mess, or else this country's fucked. There's no future for the kids. What are we doing? It's fucking disgusting. And a lot of immigrants that actually do come here for a better opportunity, many leave within 5 years because they can't cut the housing costs, the quality of life, the work, the job market isn't nearly as good as they believe it would have been. And they can't financially cut it and they end up leaving anyways. So even the productive immigrants that are coming here are not able to actually get ahead, just like the actual native population. And when the system's fundamentally broken, mass importing people from other countries isn't gonna fix it. That's like trying to slap a Hello Kitty Band-Aid on like a pipe that's bursting. You know what I mean? Like it's, what the fuck are you doing? It's not gonna work. It's gonna break everything. But once again, like I said, that could be the point. And you know, I could go off about all of the plethora of ideas I have about how to fix Canada, like overhauling the education system for one and modernizing it so that the youth can actually get trained in stuff like artificial intelligence, tech, math, science, engineering, stuff that will actually provide value in the future, construction, trades, these things, get them into the work environment, like through internship programs immediately. You could do these things. We could open up the Arctic. We could slash taxes. We could leverage our resources for massive trade deals. But you know what? It's all hua, hua, hua. It's not going to happen. This government's not going to make it happen. They'll make promises that it's going to happen. But that brings me back to a more important part here is that if you're relying on a government to turn your country around or to make your life better, you're already in a losing position. Because let me tell you something about governments. They're not here to help you. When the government comes and they go, hey, we're here to help, fucking run. That's when you gotta run, lads. So this video is not to complain or be nihilistic. It's just to accept reality for what it is within that nation and inform people this is what's going on in Canada in the modern era. So what can you do if you're a Canadian and you're looking to move on and have better, higher horizons? Well, one thing I would definitely recommend to get started is you need a location-independent income. It's the new survival code, essentially. So any source of income, it could be an e-com store. You could sell options and trade stocks. You could trade cryptocurrencies. You could provide online services, get contracts and gigs that way. Whatever floats your boat, but as long as you have location-independent income, you're now positioned well to leave. okay? You no longer rely on Canada for an income. That's important. It's the only way forward, honestly. Once you have location-independent income and you have complete control of that, you now have the freedom to choose which jurisdiction you get to live in the entire world. This could get real fun, where you could have a much lower cost of living. You can legally lower your tax rate to 0 or very minimal. And there's a plethora of new opportunities, new companies you can invest in, new real estate, new cities to live in. The world's your oyster, you know? And the beautiful thing about that is once you make money online or through global assets, the government loses control over you. So once again, this channel, it always ties back to real sovereignty and freedom. We're not trying to look flashy and drive Lambos to look rich here. We're actually trying to be sovereign, free humans. And that takes a lot of work, honestly. It takes a lot of positioning, it takes a lot of kung fu, I guess, you know, to get around problems, but that's what we're here to do, because what else is there to do? Currently, I'm in the scouting phase where I'm checking out different regions of the world that I think would apply to my needs and wants in life, particularly being a place where freedom is higher on the agenda. The city streets are safe, the nature's beautiful, it's a business-friendly environment, tax-friendly environment where my kids could grow up and, you know, honestly not be in this position that I'm currently being put in, because everything moves in cycles. So by the time the next cycle arises, they'll have their good times and eventually, inevitably, the hard times will come again, but I want them to be better positioned than I was. And I think as men, that's our duty, is to always think and make actions towards the future generations, whether it's even yours or not. It's just, that's the future of humanity. And so the tough call has to be made, you know? Some other regions that I am interested in are Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Montenegro, Romania, Serbia, Budapest, Hungary. These are regions that intrigue me. I like what their governments are doing. I'd rather my abilities reward their government by more investment than the current one I'm under. And, you know, I realized in Canada, my vote basically doesn't matter anymore. So essentially, I'm going to be voting with my feet and my money, because that's what's more important, honestly. And unfortunately, that's just where the situation Canada is. But, you know, sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Like, if your country, and I know Canada is not alone in this, most of the West is going through this. I've heard similar stories out of Australia and Western Europe. And so what I'd say to you guys, and I'm in the same boat as you, is maybe it's a blessing in disguise to see, rip the Band-Aid and see reality for what it is. And it kind of forces us to expedite our lives in ways that we may not have necessarily thought to do before, and open up opportunities available to ourselves as well as our children in the future, or current children, that, you know, it just, a little bit of hardship can make you think creatively, and that can go a far long way. And I think that is important. That's the silver lining here, because we don't want to be doom and gloom, because it just is what it is. And then just because one country is not doing so well doesn't mean there aren't a plethora out there that are thriving and you'd have a great life in, you know? So it's just food for thought. And if there's anything I talked about that you're curious about, or you have questions about, or you're just pissed and you want to say something, or get it off your chest, Mitch, you're a fucking asshole, comment. I don't give a fuck. Helps the algorithm anyway. Run it. And don't get me wrong, I wish I was wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Canada does turn it around in the future. Canadian people are great. Canada has so much potential. I love Alberta. The people here are just rock solid people. And the reason for this video is not to be ranty or complain or whine. It's just to bring some truths to light and then provide solutions at the end, or just perhaps another way of thinking or seeing things. And, you know, I'm not here to try to piss you off and make you all frantic and scared. I'm here to, you know, shake you up a little bit and say, hey, wake up, wake up. It's time to wake up, and provide some solutions out of here, or some solutions that could work best for you. And if, you know, leaving Canada isn't in the stars for you, you're stuck here for whatever reason, honestly, my biggest recommendation, and that's not the end of the world, okay? you could still make it work. If you set up the right systems in life, you can have a great life anywhere. I would personally recommend to probably leave the cities. I think the way to play Canada, in my opinion, is to open up a corporation, purchase legacy land, build some beautiful property buildings in nature, overlooking lakes or mountains, and try to pass that along to your children. I think that's the way to play Canada. And perhaps Canada will turn around in the future. It has all the foundational things in place where it easily could with the right management, the right leadership. I just am personally betting against the fact that it will go in that direction. Because I honestly don't see the intent of the government or even the mass population to be heading in that direction. I think it's going to be one of these situations. I mean, even the RCMP put out a report where they wrote, when Canadians realize how broke they are, there's going to be a revolution. I think if things don't change, there will be a revolution or some sort of breaking point. Not that I'm necessarily advocating for that, but I just see it. If it continues on its current path, I see it going towards a revolution inevitably. Could take decades to get there. But I really hope that leadership changes and things are run properly, because it's not too late. It's totally salvageable. It's not completely doom and gloom. Still got some of the biggest freshwater reserves in the world. It's got a lot going for it. A lot of oil in Alberta. Could be a serious player in the entire world. And then honestly, there's discussion of Alberta itself. You know, if Canada really is a sinking ship, Alberta does have what it needs to leave independently. I'm not saying it would be clean and sexy right away, but it could do it if it really needed to, and that could be an interesting opportunity in the future. We could come back in the year 2040 to the country of Alberta. Could be the way the world is changing, it's becoming more multipolar and more divided, and we'll see. There's a lot on the table. A lot could happen. So I'm not going to necessarily count out Canada, but for the time being, I would rather protect my children and raise them somewhere safer with more opportunity. And I would love to be wrong and for Canada to turn around and we could return and I could show them where I grew up and the land and all that, but that's probably wishful thinking. This is why I made this video. Solutions, only a way forward. I can't believe watching this video back, I missed this point. The housing prices. This is one of the biggest issues in Canada. I can't believe I even mentioned this. The housing prices. The average house is approximately $1 million. We're not talking a nice house. We're talking a piece of shit box in the suburbs of a piece of shit city for $1 million to $2 million on average. So nobody can afford a home. The rents are absurdly high. And what happens is when nobody could afford a home, nobody could afford to have a family. So then you're getting into a demographic collapse. And for some reason, the government thinks that just because they mass import immigrants and that pads the stats temporarily, it'll look like it's not as big of an issue as it is. But even the immigrants coming in, since the foundation of the country is broken, they can't have kids either. So the immigrants can't have kids, the locals can't have kids, and the government's just trying to cover that with mass migration. And that's just not sustainable. So essentially, instead of the country investing in private industry and being innovative and developing tech or something like that could bring real jobs to the country, it decided to focus on a Ponzi scheme that is based on housing and immigration. It's not sustainable, and they've been warned multiple times not to do this, yet they doubled down, which is why that leads me back to my belief that everything here is a controlled demolition intentionally. One thing I previously forgot to mention as well is one of the actual major reasons too why I'm leaving is honestly the climate. It's the majority of the year is about 2/3 in cold and darkness. There's wildfires all summer, so you're inhaling smoke in the skies. That's becoming more rampant. The government's failing to address that correctly. And, you get bug season, so you go outside and just get ripped to shreds by mosquitoes and flies.
So, you know, I can't do it. I can't keep this shit up. Oh my God. And paying rinse rates for this? Come on.